Hello again, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, hunters and the hunted, recycling bags, cats, dogs, flora and fauna of life. I am Ancient Swan, and I hate introductions, so I'm not going to do one. Let's just get started instead. The Bronze Age, spanning approximately 3300 to 1200 BCE across different regions of the world, marked a transformative period characterized by advancements in metallurgy, urbanization, trade networks, cultural exchange, and the evolution of sex toys, which, despite not having reached the glorious age of rubber, were still at this point far more advanced than their stone predecessors. Various forms of lube were also available. None of this is relevant to today's discovery, of course. I just hate typing so many serious words without ending in something more lowbrow. I may rewrite this paragraph. I might not leave it in. We'll see. Hey, look, I left it in! Now, let me dispense with digressing and get back on point. Today we're in Morocco, right near the coast, a mere stone's throw from the Mediterranean Sea, at a discovery so recent that at the point I type this paragraph, other more important scientific journals have barely finished writing their own. Mine's is better, though, obviously. What the archaeological team has recently discovered here has rewritten what we thought we knew about this area and its history. The team, led by University of Barcelona's Hamza Benatia Melgarejo, a man whose name is very much struggling to roll off my tongue like it wants to, have proposed to rewrite the history of the ancient Maghreb. How so? Stick with me, we'll get to that. The Maghreb, in case you're unfamiliar, is this part of northwest Africa encompassing modern nations stretching from the Western Sahara all the way to Libya. It is an arid region where desert and sand exist in abundance and wet bits are few and far between, though it does get a bit more habitable as we get closer to the sea, which is fortunate for the folks who lived here, because that's where we are. So, what was it that Barcelona and Morocco's finest researchers have rewritten about the history of this place? Well, you see, the discovery of this ancient city at Kach Kouch has challenged the long-held assumption that this region of Earth was basically uninhabited until the Phoenicians arrived around 800 BCE. Now, look, I'm no expert. Nobody at any university has ever paid me to do their history stuff or dig up holes and point at the thing I discovered. However, and I say this with the utmost respect to those archaeologists, but to assume this place was devoid of people up until this recently is, how can I say this, extremely f***ing ignorant. Is this really what scientists and archaeologists thought of the Maghreb? Nobody lived here until 800 BC? Please f*** off with that rubbish. Why? Two things. Firstly, humans migrated from Africa more than 60,000 years ago, so to assume that almost every single one of them went northeast, but almost nobody bothered going around Africa's western coast, just seems incredibly obtuse to me. I'm pretty sure it's pretty obvious that humans have lived here in abundance for as long as they've been living in Europe and elsewhere, especially given point two. Because secondly, there's the fact that until not too long ago, the Sahara was a green, lush land, perfect for human settlement. In fact, it wasn't really until around 3500 BC, barely 1,000 years before Kach Kouch, that the changing Earth's tilt began to see the Sahara become the desert it is today. So, to assume that this place was almost uninhabited until the mighty Phoenicians rocked up is, in my oh-so-humble opinion, bullshit. I don't know who these scientists were that decided this so-called, apparently long-held belief that almost nobody was living in the Maghreb until 800 BC, but those scientists were dumbasses and deserve their qualifications revoked, their toes stubbed, and their urethras filled with pebbles. 50 Quid says it was some 18th century European whitey who just couldn't possibly get his head around the notion that other people, of other colours and other cultures, living in other places long ago, could master their own corner of planet Earth just like everyone else. 18th and 19th century European so-called scientists did indeed have a habit of being more than a tad racist. Have you noticed? And the articles I've been reading have all said this was a long-held belief. So I'm assuming it comes from those old racist assholes, and I'll give modern-day scientists the benefit of the doubt. I am nice, like that. I'm sorry, I feel like I've just gone on a rant. I have, haven't I? I've just ranted. I'm sorry, it's just that those old scientists have gone and stepped on one of my pet peeves. And that is when people assume that our ancestors were somehow stupid or incapable just because they lived so long ago. They didn't have smartphones and modern steel, so they must have been dumb and rubbish at building, right? No, that's not the case. They were just as smart and capable as you or me, if not more so. So anyway, I'm sorry about that. My ranting is finished. Please forgive me. Anyway, stick this picture into your brain box. Here in this wee corner of the world, it's 2200 BCE. In the grand scale of time, the Sahara just started desertifying basically last Tuesday, and much of this area is still discovering bronze, an alloy so revolutionary it made stone tools look like pants. Somewhere in Morocco, a bunch of folks decided to put down their wandering sticks, settle at Kach Kouch, and start building a society. Why here, you ask? Maybe they liked the view, or maybe the rent was cheap. Either way, they picked a spot and said, this'll do. In all seriousness, this spot overlooks a lush valley, and given that so much of the surrounding area is pretty much just desert, it's kind of obvious why they might set up shop here. According to the University of Barcelona's archaeological team, Kach Kouch is the oldest known settlement in Mediterranean Africa outside of Egypt. The earliest phase of settlement dates to around 2200 to 2000 BCE, and although it is difficult to determine how permanent a settlement this was, it at least confirms what we should have already known. That being, humans were here, looking at the desertified mountains around them before kicking ass and taking notes. Fast forward a few hundred or so years until around 1300 BCE, and the second phase of Kach Kouch kicks in, and this is when Kach Kouch really starts to own the Maghreb. Nestled between the Mediterranean on one side and the Atlas Mountains behind it, Kach Kouch was also strategically located between trade routes and natural resources. Translation: they had copper, tin, and enough minerals to kickstart their little Bronze Age empire. It's like they built their settlement on top of an ancient 7-Eleven, except instead of bulk toilet paper, it was all about metals. And hey, metals were the iPhones of their time. Shiny, expensive, and guaranteed to make your neighbors jealous. Excavations from this time have revealed wood and mud brick buildings, stone grinding tools, and rock-cut silos, all which indicate a permanent and sedentary lifestyle. Much like my brother when he became a teenager and discovered weed. So permanent and sedentary, half the family forgot he even existed. Just like Kach Kouch. They didn't just sit around playing with ore, though. They farmed, herded, and crafted things like pottery and tools, all while probably complaining about taxes. Because let's face it, no matter the era, someone's always collecting something. Grain, livestock, taxes, or your soul. As for trade, Kach Kouch wasn't just a dusty outpost, it was a buzzing hub in a prehistoric network. They swapped copper, tin, and maybe the occasional questionable artifact. What's that? You've got ivory and beads from Egypt? I will raise you a handcrafted bronze dagger, 3 dildos, and an attitude problem. Archaeologists have found ceramics that scream made in Spain and metal objects with Mediterranean chic vibes. These Bronze Age people weren't just isolated mountain folk. They were connected to a global supply chain before Jeff Bezos was even a concept in stardust. You know, it's not easy to get from Africa to Spain and back, not even today, but these people were doing it at a time before the Phoenicians had even showed up. Who needs amazing fancy boat when simple boat do trick? Life in Kach Kouch was a mix of farming, feasting, and let's be honest, probably dealing with an unbearable relative or two. They grew crops like barley and wheat and raised animals that doubled as food sources and unwilling co-workers. Let's just tie a plough to Bessie and see if she figures it out. Meanwhile, the cow gives them the side-eye dead eye and tries to escape to no avail. Social hierarchies were alive and well here too. Some graves came decked out with fancy jewelry and weapons, clearly saying, "I was important and I want you to know it even when I'm dead." Meanwhile, the rest of the population got the equivalent of the Bronze Age economy burial package, basic and functional, no frills. And let's not forget pottery. If they had Instagram, you can bet they'd be posting pics with their jugs out and captions like, "Look at this drip, 100% locally fired." And then there was their religion, which of course they had to have. Religion wasn't just about keeping the gods happy, though. It was also a great excuse to throw a party. Rituals and ceremonies were the Bronze Age equivalent of Saturday night karaoke, except instead of embarrassing themselves with bad singing and killer hangovers, they were sacrificing goats and asking the rain gods for better crop yields. Not sure how much that's going to work, though. Their god was probably just like, "Bro, you've chosen to settle on the edge of the fucking desert. Just how much rain were you expecting? You want wet? Then you should have built a house somewhere wetter." Figurines and ceremonial objects found at the site suggest these folks didn't just believe in the supernatural, they went all in. Maybe they thought, if we keep the gods entertained, they won't smite us with droughts or locusts. Win-win. The final phase of occupation here, dating just as those fine fellows the Phoenicians were arriving around 800 to 600 BCE, shows significant cultural appropriation. The Phoenicians were not replacing the people already living here, but were instead trading with and influencing them to a point that this lost city, Kach Kouch, begins to show significant changes, such as the traditional mud brick buildings now being built on stone foundations. Kach Kouch eventually declined, though, as all good things do, whether it's a civilization or just my general will to live. Evidence shows that Kach Kouch was slowly abandoned around 600 BCE. The reasons could have been climate change, resource depletion, or someone deciding to build a new trade route that bypassed the settlement entirely. In fact, those newer nearby settlements being founded by the Phoenicians, such as Carthage, were indeed more than likely taking valuable trade away from Kach Kouch. Imagine being the manager of Kach Kouch back then. "Hey guys, would you like to stay up here and make little money, or would you like to go down there and make loads?" It's a no-brainer. There is no evidence of violence or destruction at Kach Kouch, therefore it's more likely that the move was voluntary, and the people here were just moving with the times. Despite its decline, Kach Kouch left behind enough archaeological breadcrumbs to keep modern researchers busy. Because if there's one thing ancient civilizations excel at, it's making sure we still talk about them millennia later. So there you have it, Kach Kouch, the Bronze Age hotspot where people lived, traded, and probably complained about immigrants sleeping with their women and taking their jobs. Except, in this case, the immigrants were Phoenicians, and they were about to change the world in a way nobody could have seen coming. Kach Kouch, however, is a reminder that no matter how advanced we think we are, we're not that different from our ancestors. We're still chasing shiny things, trying to outdo each other and hoping the gods or algorithms are on our side. Kach Kouch may be long gone, but its legacy lives on, proving that even in 1500 BCE, people knew how to make a scene worth remembering. And at this wee corner of Morocco, at a site discovered barely 5 seconds ago, the remembering is just now getting started. You know who else remembers? Me. I remember, and I do it via videos and maps such as these, which were made by me, who is also me, for no other reason than I'm glued to my chair. and can't help myself. Much of the footage you've seen in this video is taken from the map which I created for the game Cities Skylines 2 in order to reimagine a wee bit of history. What might this corner of the world look like today if Kach Kouch had never been abandoned? If you also need to find out, then feel free to grab the free map from the link in the description below. Oh, and I literally always forget to mention this bit. For this map I have used the texture replacer mod, in particular the Rockies grassy texture, which most closely resembled the photos I pointed my eyes at on Google Maps. Now, would you like some map info? I want that, do you, you saucy little snuggle muffin? Okay, here it is. Here's the information for this map. Climate, 10 to 31 degrees Celsius, buildable area, 50%. Outside connections, roads, rail, sea, air, power, natural resources. Wheat, 48 square kilometers. Forest, 151 kilotons, or 94 kilotons. Oil, 51.7 kilotons. Terrain. Lots of flat land surrounded by the Great Rif and Atlas Mountains. And that's that, folks. That's our exploration of the Rif Valley. So I hope you paid attention. Knowledge is king. That's our exploration of this wee bit of Moroccan history over, or Phoenician history, or African history, or history of the Maghreb, or my rant about disrespecting your ancestors. Whatever. They're all correct. I hope you had fun, and if you don't mind terribly subscribing if you haven't done already, then that would help. Also, press the like button as if my life depended on it, because my wife assures me that may well be the case. I'm off for now. Thanks again. Don't forget I love your legs, and I'll see you next time. Peace, love, and Kach Kouch. Oh shit, I almost forgot. I always forget. The Patreon. You know that thing that us YouTube folks like to pimp ourselves out and wish that someone will buy us a coffee? Well, you can do that too. I've got a Patreon. It has 2 subscribers. That's all, too. And I love them both dearly, like actual genuine infatuation. Thank you so much, my dear Didi and George H. Thank you from the tips of my wee toes to the tip of my big nose. So anyway, if you also would like to donate just one single little dollar per month towards my life and lack thereof, both I and my wife would be immensely grateful. It supports the channel and gets her off my back for as long as it takes to drink a coffee. No problem. If not, though, I get it. I also am adverse to giving people my pennies. Such is life. Anyway, that's enough of me pimping my own ass out like the cheap slappy ho-ho that I am. That's all for me again. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. Peace, love, and Kach Kouch. Thank you, and goodbye.